Welcome to Psychic Evolution with evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and spiritual coach and healer Maggie Clark.
And welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is the podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts.
And these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural.
Now, today we have Harmony Fonseca back on. She was on season 3 of our podcast, and we're just happy to have her back. She is a divine feminine mentor. And not only that, I have a huge announcement to make to all of our listeners because you guys love podcasts, because obviously this is a podcast. Harmony, myself, and also our friend April, we have created a new podcast, which has already launched. So check it out. It's called The Goddess, the Witch, and the Womb. And at the very end of this episode, we'll play the trailer for you. So if you are interested in the divine feminine, we will definitely make sure that you hear what that podcast is going to be about and what you can expect from it. I have been blessed to be on her priestess path, which is a beautiful path that she has on her mystery school. I've talked about it a couple times in the podcast only because it's activated some things within me. And one of those things was a lot of experiences with Green Tarot when I chose her as a mentor on the priestess path. So I can highly recommend her priestess path if you are into the divine feminine, if you want to learn how the natural world relates to who you are as a woman today and what you can do with that. Not only that, I mean, it's a little bit witchy because Harmony's a little bit witchy, but she calls herself a witch, but she is not your typical what you would picture as a witch. She's not your Wiccan in a pagan in a circle of 13 women doing spells all the time, but she
Not all the time. Yeah.
Not all the time, but she has a great foundational understanding of what the craft is all about, whether we call it witchcraft, magic, or using your energy. It's all the same thing. And so she has a really cool background in a lot of studying around the divine feminine, the history of the divine feminine. She's also a shamanic life coach, and she studies with a Native American very intensely to really cultivate and expand her wisdom and her knowledge about the divine feminine and about the relationship to the earth and all the elements here. So without any further ado, Harmony, welcome back to our podcast.
Thank you, Maggie and Jamie. I'm so excited to be here again. I love your podcast.
Thank you so much. And yeah, Harmony's an avid listener of our podcast, which we love. So, Harmony, in your teachings and in your divine feminine mentorships, what is the biggest thing that draws people to the work that you do?
I've heard from a lot of women, that's me. I share a lot of my heart on Instagram. I've shared a lot of myself on there through my posts. And I think a lot of women resonate with the healing journey that I've been on, as well as some of the witchy things. You know, all women get excited around those things. They're like a little scared of it, but a little excited about it. And like you said, it's all spirituality. It's all the same thing. But of course, I have this big witchy vibe that kind of precedes me. And I believe that's because I've had past lives with that, being a witch or called a witch. And so I'm embracing that in this life. You know, what they killed these women for being witches per se was just for them, you know, owning their divine feminine birthright and living their spirituality and being healers and teachers. And so I'm bringing that into this life, and I don't identify with being Wiccan or pagan because I believe there is a plethora of knowledge out there that we can access and that can actually empower us as women. So I think that comes through in my posts and how I share myself. And it gets women excited. Like, I want to come, I want to heal, I want to do the work you're doing.
Now, the work that you do in embracing your divine feminine, how does that work with your psychic abilities and in, embracing those? And how does it work to cultivate those as well?
So I believe that a lot of our psychic abilities, a lot of us don't access them because we stay in crown chakra mode. And with the divine feminine work, we're bringing that down to the womb. Now, if you're a man, that would be your hora. It's a similar energy there, but in a female's body, we have this womb, this portal to the divine where actual spirit can come into a body. And you create a baby, which creates a life, right? So your psychic abilities, I believe, need to be embodied, brought from the crown down into the body. And as women, a lot of us have womb blocks, I would call them root chakra, sacral chakra blocks from past lives, from experiences in this life. And those blocks will prevent you actually from manifesting your true psychic abilities as well as your abilities to manifest. So when you start clearing that area, clearing the root, clearing the sacral chakra, and really empowering yourself in that area, then you start realizing the psychic potential that is in you because you're embodying it. You're actually expressing it in your everyday life. You're no longer afraid of it. And you're actually using it to help you, to assist you in all your everyday tasks.
You bring up an interesting point, and that is you're talking about past lives. Have you done, as I call it, any soul tracing to get information, to get insight about some of these past lives and the lineage of where it's brought you to now? And have you done any soul searching with your family lineage as well as seeing their soul prints of consciousness that have come into this family to unify and perpetuate that spiritual energy?
Yes, I have done a lot of work around my Akashic records. I actually recently was thinking I want to dive even deeper into this because I do a lot of this work myself in my own meditations through opening my Akashic records. I come from a family of all women. I have 3 sisters. And there's definitely some threads there from past lives around this witchy stuff, around the spirituality that I believe is untangling itself in this life. And I believe that, part of me stepping up and into the work I'm doing is somehow helping my family, even though it looks a little bit messy. So I know that the work that I'm doing on myself is going to go out and eventually come back the way that it's meant to. So I focus mostly on doing that work within myself and extending that light and love and peace that I've found within those past lives to my family. But I also, during those meditations, doing that soul searching or soul tracing, as you call it, I've also found a lot of inner wisdom within myself that I didn't really have in my younger years. So like pulling in, I would say some of those strengths actually, or abilities that I had in past lives into this life. And in this life, I'm learning to express them freely without being afraid, really showing up in my power and helping others to do the same, hopefully.
Just one other thing as you're talking about that, have you gone back to a younger you in this lifetime to share some of the experiences, some of what you've grown into already to help even better your life as a younger person?
So myself as a child, yes, I was raised in a really religious household. I was raised LDS, Mormon, some people know it as. And, there was an inner knowing in me from the time I was a child, which was kind of not looked at as being a good thing then. Of course, I was kind of the odd one out. Because, when I prayed to get the answer if that church I was attending was true for me, it wasn't. And so what do I do with that as a child? So I've had to go back to those religious conditionings that I grew up with, as well as trauma I experienced as a child, and work through those things to be able to empower myself now. Those are the wounds or the blocks of the womb that I'm talking about that I held that were preventing me from expressing my truest self or my highest self per se.
Now that you've created your past, have you gone to any future yous?
Sometimes I do that, not a whole lot. I don't get too far into the future. I try to stay in the moment and, heal what came before by recreating it and realizing that it was my strength all along.
Cool. Very nice.
And you really bring up a good point that we teach a lot about the chakras just to make sure that everyone understands that this is your energy. It's really important to get to know it. It will help with your psychic development. And when we teach, we really emphasize that it's not just in the upper chakras. We can develop the third eye, the crown chakra, all these connections that we perceive as psychic portals, right? But in essence, we have that clairsentient, that gut feeling that's down in the solar plexus. Like you're going a little bit lower. And what you're talking about is like saying, well, you're never going to feel safe in all of your abilities until you cultivate the lower chakras, the womb space, the sacral chakra, the root chakra, and really getting into the full column of the full channel of energy in the being. And I think that sometimes is what goes amiss, is that we want to develop some things. We're like, we'll just focus on the third eye so I can meditate. But what if you meditated in your womb? What if you meditated in your root chakra? And there's other places that you can develop your psychic abilities. And you bring up such a good point that once you do feel safe, you will hone those abilities, you'll harness them, and you'll be able to integrate them in a different way. I love that because many people don't even address that with the psychic potential that they have within. They think it's all like from the head up. If I meditate, they think about their brain checking out, so they're focused on their head. Or if they're thinking about, connecting to their higher self, they're thinking higher self above the crown. So they're focused again above the head. And so much of us is just like looking up to the stars, up to the heavens, up to the portals, up to the dimensions. And it's like, hello, come back down to earth. So I love how embodied this feels as a full practice of just like, hey, you got to get it all the way down the channel and all the way into where you are today on earth. When you're teaching the priestess path, and I know you also have a membership, the Divine Feminine membership, what are the biggest questions that you get as you're teaching, as you're going forward? What are the biggest things that come up for people that they need to talk about or they have questions about? Because those might be the questions right now that people are already thinking in their head. So what is one of the biggest questions you get?
I would say they're around what embodiment actually is, how you do that, what that word really means. And, I've gotten a lot over and over again. What is anchoring heaven on earth? And there's also a lot of people get stuck in the priestess path on the inner child temple. And this is where we heal the inner child wounds. So I've really found that the inner child is hard for a lot of us to access because we've repressed them so long. We haven't even identified with them. And so a lot of us are living our lives projecting that inner child because they're inside you, screaming inside your psyche, like, let me out, let me be seen, because they weren't as a child. So, a lot of that inner child healing requires deep inner work, like really looking within. And I would say the question around embodiment and anchoring heaven on earth kind of wraps around that same inner child thing. If we can't embrace our inner child as part of us and allow them to be expressed, we'll never be able to take that energy that's from the head up, as you explain, and bring it down into the body. And this is what embodiment is. It's embodying the energy you find up here in the crown chakra and the third eye and moving it through the throat, allowing it to be expressed through your throat. But it's always going to come out kind of mixed up, like your inner child reaching out for help rather than your most empowered self coming out. So that embodiment is really important, and that requires movement. It can require mantra meditations, a lot of journaling, there's so many practices I bring to the priestess path to help women walk through this type of path. Like the rage dance, allowing yourself to have that sacred rage for whatever you experienced as a child, as a teen, as an adolescent, even as an adult. We have a lot of rage and we deny that as women because we're supposed to show up as being this so sweet and obeying and really like this good girl thing. So even women allowing themselves to express that rage, they get stuck there. But then they find most of the time when they move through that, there's this empowerment. And that is what anchoring heaven on earth really is, in my opinion. Of course, we can bring heaven to our everyday life, by making our life beautiful. You go to Hawaii and you think, oh, this is heaven on earth. What I'm talking about is being okay wherever you're at because you've fully embodied your divinity. You've fully accepted all of yourself, all aspects of yourself, from child to the family you were born in, and you bring it into yourself into an integrated way that it anchors into your everyday life where you're shining this light because you're at peace with the fact that you chose to come here and live these life experiences. It doesn't mean they're not hard. Doesn't mean that when hard times come, you're not going to cry and you're not going to trip around, but you're always going to have that inner knowing, that stabilization. And I think that's what I bring to the priestess path. And I bring that because, you can't teach what you haven't lived through. So a lot of what I've lived through is what I'm teaching. And in my younger years, my husband would always say he was my string and I was the kite. Like I really had, I had feet, of course, but they weren't anchored on this earth. That's for sure. I was so far up and out. I really did need to bring me back and down and in. And now I don't need that. I don't need him. I'm not a kite. I don't need him to hold on to my string because I've anchored my own divinity into my body and into my life experience.
You bring up an interesting point for me, and just my awareness, is that you're sharing the fact that your inner child is like, hey, mother, wake up, give me some attention. And yet our guides never do that. They don't go, you better acknowledge me. It's, hey, if you're ever even ready to do it, because we're here, we got your back, no problem. But we're not going to make you do it. I think that brings up an interesting point that, to me, it seems like no outside sources we perceive it. We're all one. But none of the guides are going to try to make us happen because they're not necessarily in our lives as that inner child. So now it's not the manipulation, but now it becomes the co-creation of bringing that inner child out that in the beginning needs to scream because most people don't listen. Pretty soon you can get the soul whispers. And then it's even more effective, less distracting, and even more empowering.
I think that's some of the beautiful aspects of your work, Harmony, is that your priestess path, when I jumped into it, I was like, this is huge. Like, I was not expecting that much material. I wasn't expecting that many instructions of how to process this, because I did a lot of this work when I was younger. I dealt with the inner child. I started that in my 20s and really kind of learned a lot of the basic things about how to deal with yourself and how to connect. And not only that, I was, working with my psychic gifts as well. So I had other teachings that led me there, but I was so impressed at the plethora of wisdom there. And not only that, what to do, like step-by-step instruction as what you can do. There's always something that you can do when you're feeling a certain way, or you feel disconnected, or you're trying to connect, and there was so much. It was so rich. I really took a lot of time with it because it was so vast. So I want to applaud you on the amount of material that's in there. It's totally amazing. And I think it's very, very well done and very well put together for anyone coming in who's like, I need to really learn the basics and then learn it from the ground up the right way, so you're not backtracking. And I think that that's sometimes what we end up doing in this culture is we're presented with a spiritual affirmation, right? A spiritual wisdom. And then we're like, okay, cool. I believe it. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing. But then it really never gets inside of you. It stays floating up in the upper chakra, so to speak, or in your head. And I did this as well as a teenager. I was like, oh, I believe in unconditional love, that therefore I'm unconditionally loving because I believe it. Well, it wasn't until I had experiences where I wasn't feeling so loving that I realized it wasn't actually embodied. It was just in my head. It was just an idea. And what you're offering is a way to actually pull this into your everyday life, pull this into the embodiment phase, which is amazing. And I think it's what is needed right now in our culture because there are so many people out there that are grabbing onto these new age concepts or these spiritual ideals, these wisdoms, but they have no idea what it actually means in a real life experience or when the shit hits the fan. So I'm loving that the work you're doing. And more importantly, I absolutely love that you and I and April get to have another podcast. I've always been one of those people that wanted to dance in the moon. I had full moon ceremonies every year for 16 years and doing my divine feminine work with my women friends. And it's always been a rich nourishment for me. And I feel like every woman on the planet could benefit from experiencing a sisterhood, experiencing that within themselves, that within their family, but then also having a community that they can actually come to, which, really that's when we formed the Goddess, the Witch, and the Womb podcast. It was to support people on their journey into the divine feminine and to really pick apart and talk about the things that needed to be talked about. Now, so just so our listeners know, we'll play the trailer at the end of this episode so that you can hear it. But we do talk a lot about claiming the divine feminine birthright, healing energy, because all three of us are healers, and also ancestral wisdom, self-love, and sacred sexuality. And these are some topics that are a little bit different for a lot of people. The ancestral wisdom is about finding your wisdom within. And what about the sacred sexuality? Why is it so important to understand that concept as an embodiment practice?
So in the work that I do, we're working with the Kundalini energy, and the Kundalini energy is the masculine and the feminine within you, and it moves like a serpent up the spine. But a lot of us are masculine driven in our everyday life. We do, go, go, go. And so a lot of my original training, like when I became a teacher type training, was through yoga, which brought me to the tantric teachings of yoga. And there is something called a lock in yoga. Now, a lot of people know that, like, you can tip your chin forward. You're locking the energy here at the throat chakra. This is called a bandha. And when you create that lock of energy in yoga, you're kind of working with that energy there. You're like calling it in all right there. Now, the piece that I was always like curious about and missing that the tantric yoga teachings brought to me that actually raised the Kundalini energy is the locks in the lower part of the body. So there are locks called Sajoli, Ashwini, and you're locking your lower body parts and create locks with those. And the reason you do this, and then you also lock the throat, is to work on this energy in between here, all the chakras from the root to the throat. And it's kind of a building of energy here. And by doing this, you activate the Kundalini, which activates your psychic abilities, which activates your healing abilities. So when I started learning this technique of these locks, and then also learning the mantras that go along with each chakra, I started feeling that anchoring of heaven on earth, that waking up in my body. It felt like stars imploding in my womb space. And every day that I did that, I felt more anchored in my feet, in my power on this earth, where I used to feel like I don't belong here. I belong on another planet. This planet is too mean. It's too harsh. Like, it just doesn't vibe with me, to going to this place where, like, I know I am meant to be here. I know I chose to be here, and I chose to be here now for this specific mission, to help clear my family lineage and empower my family lineage, as well as the collective, all of the women that are drawn to my work. I'm helping them do the same. And a lot of us are afraid to talk about that sexual energy, like it's bad, like it's, and it's not any of that you might think that it is. It's just helping you to empower and regulate that energy within you, and then be able to use it in a way that it was meant to be used.
I just learned something new, because at the age of 19, I unlocked my Kundalini, and I honestly think I was doing what you're talking about with, locking energy in the lower areas, right? And I didn't, of course, lock the throat, because I was just playing around like with energy, not knowing what the heck I was doing. And it was pretty fascinating, because I woke up an energy within me. And I remember after waking that energy up, I went into this almost an astral plane experience where I met my soul essence, and we clasped hands together. And I, of course, put both of my hands up on the top. And she goes, no, left hand up, right hand over, because left hand receives, right hand gives. And she clasped my hands, and this jolt of lightning, Kundalini energy, coursed through my entire being. I felt like I was being electrocuted and charged and activated, and it was absolutely insanely amazing, and it scared the crap out of me. And I remember like going, what the hell is this, right? And my eyes fluttered open and I was paralyzed. I was paralyzed for at least 5 to 10 minutes. And all I could do was look at things. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. And I know that this is part of how some people can experience activations of their Kundalini. They can be pretty drastic at times. They can be pretty intense. And just so our listeners know, there is a little caveat I like to put out here. You know, when you start opening your Kundalini, you have to be conscientious that you could potentially paralyze yourself. I mean, there is a slight potential that could happen. So just kind of take it with a grain of salt. Find a teacher like Harmony if you've opened your Kundalini. Find someone who can guide you through the process. Because what I learned after that opening was, one, my psychic abilities went off the charts. In that 6 months after that, I was remembering past lives, at least 30 past lives. I was remembering all these things. I had met my mentor shortly thereafter as well to help guide me, because I needed a teacher. I didn't know what that energy was. It scared me so bad when I was paralyzed. So I needed someone to guide me and teach me and show me and tell me what the heck was going on. And that was an important part of my journey and a very activating point. But I never knew until you were talking that that's part of a tantric yoga, because I've never studied yoga before. It's on my to-do list when I'm like in my 70s, I think. But I love that you can actually teach this as a practice. So you don't have someone like me at 19 years old scaring the crap out of myself, thinking I should close off my energy because I didn't know what to do with it. Now, like as these things become more talked about and more shared, people will find that there are people that they can turn to, that they can go to, that they can get educated from. And I love that, because sacred sexuality has always been a part of my journey since I activated myself. And learning that you could actually consciously do this through yoga is really cool. That's fascinating.
And I just gave you a piece of that, just like a little bit of that practice. I mean, there's far more to that practice than I told you. And I actually have a mentor I work with in India, and her name is Gopika. And she has taught me a lot, like really expanded my knowledge base on what this energy can do for you. And with the women specifically fearing their bodies because of trauma they've lived through in this life, sexual trauma, and then also past life trauma. And when those traumas happen, it makes us feel like our bodies are not a safe place to live. And you know, our mind, it tries to protect us. So it brings us up and out of the body. And then it like stores the memories in the unconscious mind. And then we're not accessing actually one of the places, like you said, you accidentally like woke yourself up on a level you had no idea that you were working with. We are bypassing that by suppressing these wounds. And this is why a lot of my healing work is around being a womb priestess, and healing the womb is helping women to express those things that have happened to them that is trauma in some way, whether that be through words, through body movements, because sometimes, a lot of times, that energy just needs to be moved. And then we can like take this big exhale, like, oh, okay, I am safe here. That was just an experience then. It's not happening now. And then when you do that, you open up the ability to awaken the Kundalini within you, which is awakening your psychic abilities, your psychic potential, your healing abilities, all of the abilities.
I'm just the oddball, but I wanted unification of my soul protective consciousness, meaning I go back to past lives where I was a woman too. I wanted the balance, understanding, and compassion for what each of us perceive as the male and female, or the masculine and feminine. That way, as I'm in a male body this time, I still have the understanding and compassion for the female aspect of what I've gone through in other lifetimes. That has been truly healing and empowering for me. Have you ever done that?
What's interesting, I believe predominantly I have lived as a woman, but I do believe there's masculine lifetimes. I haven't accessed a lot of them. I've touched on one that I get close to, and that's part of my desire to go deeper there because I haven't been able to access that really well. I have accessed a lifetime that has really helped me to understand a lot of people in my life, where a lifetime where I believe I was a girl that identified as a boy. And in that time, that was not accepted at all. I believe it wasn't in that lifetime accepted by my mother. And I've seen that in that lifetime, I actually left home because my father didn't accept me. My mother loved me, unconditionally. She was trying to help me through some of these things. And I ran away to find myself. And I believe I died by falling into a hole is what I've seen. So that was a really traumatic lifetime that that's one I've been working with recently, off and on, trying to dig into that and how it's affecting me in my life now. One way that's affecting me is if my kids, or even not even just my kids, if I'm at retreat and we're in Sedona on the edge of a cliff and the women want to take pictures and they stand on the edge of the cliff, my body literally almost, you can't stop me. My body moves before I have time to control it to grab you. And it's almost like a internal shake, like I can't let you be there, that fear. And so that kind of weird fear that I was like, what is this? That caused me to okay, I'm going to go into my own Akashic records and look at this lifetime. And then what was interesting around that is I had a card reading with Shelby from Tamed Wild around past lives. She went straight into that past life and was like, I'm here where you were a girl that identifies as a boy. And, she helped me untangle that. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can go into that with, but I've never specifically went into where I was a man. But I know that even in this life, I have a tendency to be masculine driven, to be go do, as a lot of women do in this life. So balancing that out, that's why the work with the divine feminine, I believe, is so important, Jamie, is because us women are, masculine driven, just like most men. So
yeah, I've always liked that balance. I've always wanted to understand the best that I can where that person is coming from. So that if I've had an experience like you're talking about that, you've already gone through it. I don't have to keep going through it. For me, I just learned from it. But in that, there's also a dynamic of, you bring up an interesting point for me, and that is the fear of heights or on the cliff thing. Now, for myself, I have been terrified of drop-offs. Man, anything that's I'm freaking freaked out. My body's shaking and all that. And so I was doing past life regressions. I'm like, what the frick am I looking for? And so Chi, my master guide, was like, well, Jamie, why don't you create a target of information? And in this case, you have a fear of heights. Why don't you soul trace and see if you come across a lifetime where that might have been an activation of that fear of height? So I started doing that. As I come through in the 1930s, I dropped down energy-wise back east where I was working on a 40-story building. I was a beam walker apparently in that life. And there was a big bolt that I stepped on and whoo, straight down, and I was done. Now, understanding a little bit more of the contributing factor to go, oh, no wonder why if it's a drop-off, I'm freaking freaked out. But if it's like this, I'm fine. Have you ever done past life regressions for fears or phobias or empowerments of self-realization?
What came to mind with that was I have explored a past life where I was with my mother and my sisters, actually, and dancing around a fire. I believe that lifetime is intermeshed in this lifetime specifically, really strongly, because there was a lot of competitive energy there, a lot of throwing the other person under the bus, controlling the other person. And you see that in my family dynamic now with my mother, father, and sisters, not in my family that I've had my own children. And what's interesting about that, I've worked with that a lot. I know one of my little sisters has worked with it as well. I believe that in that lifetime, my cattle were burned and there were women in a circle, I can see it so vividly. And I believe part of my work in this lifetime, part of my moral values around animals and what I choose to eat is wrapped around that lifetime. And I think it's probably because those things haven't been completely worked out. So my soul's still hanging on to that loss of those cows. And cows particular in this lifetime, since I was a kid, even as a teenager, I'd do this weird, bizarre thing as we drive by cows. I'd like moo at them. I just love cows. I have this like soul deep attachment to cows, and it kind of connects me to Hathor and Isis, but it also is part of, I believe, that life. So I do think that those past lives, they play a huge role in this life. But what's been interesting to me, Jamie, is, and maybe you can answer this question for me, is it's interesting because I feel my soul and other people's soul print, as you call it, as perfect, as perfection. And so to me, it feels, whenever I do this work, it feels a little foreign. Like, why would my soul hold trauma that would affect me in this lifetime? And the only thing I've been able to come to is that it's supposed to inform something here in this lifetime for us to do work around. So that's why I take those things like loving a cow, or my friends in this lifetime that are women who would identify as being men, then really coming at those situations from a different perspective because of that soul memory I have. But what do you think around that, Jamie? Do you think that's why we have those, or why do you think they're coming in our soul into this lifetime?
Some of this, but it's also in this life that you're equating to go, hey, here's the awareness of updated energy. Sometimes you'll bring that old pattern back to go, I'm dealing with some crap in this life too. So it's not like everything's perfect and everyone okay. It's, whoa. And even though I'm doing soul tracing or whatever you want to call it to find myself, I'm still seeing that I haven't been able to let go of some of those dynamics of what I've tuned into. So now, what if it's that you're strong enough to bring it up to your conscious awareness, to deal with it with a little bit more awareness of inside information, life experience, that kind of stuff. But you also bring up an interesting point for me, and that is for the Akashic records. To my awareness, we are eternal beings. With those Akashic records, are you able to tap into your existence as we perceive it near the beginning? Just to me, because that science and spirituality stuff are starting to validate a lot of the esoteric energies, and hey, we're eternal beings, and scientifically they validated that humans are basically energy, and with that basic energy in quantum physics, they found that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. But then I say, but wait a minute. If that means that we are eternal and we've always been, and yet this universe has only been here 14.3 billion years, we may not be from this universe. When you're connecting with the Akashic records, do you go back to, as we perceive it, earlier times?
Absolutely. I resonate definitely with being on another planet. And I think that's where in my younger years, I'd be like, I don't belong here, that type of thing. And I do have a lot of dreams in this lifetime where I'm even on Neptune and different planets, and they feel very, very real. And I almost, to your point of what I've done and what I've worked with, and I've gone back to a planet, and I'm not sure what this actual planet is, but I do believe it's my origins. And I believe there is huge love on that planet. And that's why me specifically, whenever I wake anything up, my predominant feeling in this lifetime is this love that overpowers me. And I try to explain it to other people. I never feel like I'm portraying it or sharing it in a way that it feels so powerful within me that it's coming across right. I guess, my kids will laugh at me when I'm into this, but there is this love where I come from. And there's a lot of water where I come from. I can tell you that. It's beautiful and it's green. There's so much green there. And I feel like this is my soul's origins. My body doesn't feel human there, but it does kind of have a humanness to it. I love to go there just to feel at peace and to feel at home. So I try to find that actually on this planet. So I'm always drawn to places where there's lots of trees, lots of greenery, any water, any creek. That makes me feel more at home here on this planet. And then also surrounding myself, but with other people who seem to carry that same vibration of love makes me feel at home, makes me feel held here, where this life still at the point I'm at, sometimes it's like, this world is too scary and too mean. I'm out. And then it's like, no, you're not. You've got your soul family here. You've got your people, they're on that same vibrational field or link or thread that you're on. And all you have to do is reach out, and then you'll remember, oh, it is safe here. And so, yeah, that's my experience.
Also, we've played this advertisement in a couple of our podcast episodes. We do have a retreat coming up called The Essence of a Wild Woman. We did this last year in Sedona, and it's coming up again this year in the fall equinox. So Harmony, myself, and Margot Burdock, who is an herbal goddess, joining us. We are offering this retreat in the fall. And so just in case anyone wants to join, we still have a few spots open. It is filling up very quickly, but there are a few spots open. And it is the most magical piece of land in Sedona I've ever experienced. It has a huge labyrinth that was built to be an alien spaceship landing port. So I'm all in. But above and beyond that, what can people expect if they're on the fence about coming to the retreat, or if they want more information on it?
Oh my gosh, retreats changed my life so much. I have never felt so myself, so alive, so expanded, and woken myself up so expansively as I did at retreat. And so that fueled my own passion. So there is a possibility for you to experience all of that, but also you experience sisterhood in a different way than you do in your everyday life. It is so wild what happens when women come together and there's no outside world. It's just us in this circle. And all it takes is one woman to start sharing from her heart, and all the walls come down, all the socially conditioned, competitive, jealous behaviors that you usually see between women fall away. And there's this big love. And I think that's why I'm so at home there. It feels so beautiful, so peaceful. It's what this world needs more of. And once women have experienced that, they come back into their everyday life and they start interacting with other women in a different way, with a new, open-hearted, empowered way, to where you start having the ability to see the people in your life from a different light. And then you're going to change who you are in your relationships to your family. So it's not just at retreat. You are experiencing this and then you go home and you just leave it there and it was like a vacation. It actually changes your life. It changes your social interactions and helps you become a leader to the world we are trying to create right now. So we do women's circles. We do ceremonies every night. We have all the women dress in the same color for each different night, which is themed. And this year is Goddess, Witch, and Womb. And so we're diving into those archetypes and what they mean for us as women. And so one night we'll wear black, one night we'll wear red, and that day we do womb healing. And then one day we wear white and we do goddess work and divine sovereignty work. So, and we have a ceremony each night. This year we're going to be doing a circle dance, which is going to be led by Maggie. And I'm so excited about this. I've had so many visions of this. I'm just so excited to have her doing this. So, we do a water blessing healing ceremony at the creek. The property is it's so energetically prepared for this work. It's amazing. And you drive out a road. It's a dirt road in Sedona. You kind of feel like, am I leaving Sedona? I thought I was coming to a retreat in Sedona, and you're driving out this road and it's just kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then you turn this corner and there's this rainbow bridge. It's an actual bridge painted like a rainbow. And you cross that bridge and something happens. I tell you what, I have more energy at retreat on that particular land that we do Wild Women on. It's like I am empowered from the moment I cross that bridge. The work, the activation work, the intention they've put into that land, you can feel it. You can feel it. It's amazing.
And I must say that retreat last year changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. I came back crying with tears of release and happiness. I'm like, Jamie, I got to sit down and tell you about this for hours. And that's exactly what I did when I walked in the door. I like dropped everything, hugged my husband and said, you got to hear, I'm like a brand new person. And he just sat and listened and held space for me because Jamie's amazing. But it was amazing. And the things that I discovered within myself. And again, I was a facilitator. I wasn't just someone coming to the retreat. I was helping facilitate this retreat, but it changed my life as well. And I mean, it doesn't matter if you're coming as a facilitator or if you're coming as just a sister to gather, your life is going to be changed. Your perspective will shift. And what you carry with you, I carried that deep in my heart for this year. And it has fueled me in times where I was like, am I going to throw my hands up and walk away with this or with that? And I was like, hey, where was your commitment to yourself? Where was that? When you were at that retreat, recall that. And it has just given me so much strength through this year. So I'm excited about this year's retreat. Super happy that we're going back to the same property because it's gorgeous. So we'll have links in the show notes for that. And you could definitely reach out if you have any other questions, to Harmony. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions as well if you want to reach out and join us for a retreat. So that shall be fun. And that's at the fall equinox. So that's towards the end of September. So for 5 days and 4 nights, all inclusive.
Yes. And, everything is, like you said, divine with these retreats. There's so many divine synchronicities. You can't deny them. And you being one of them, you ending up being a main facilitator at that last retreat was life-changing. And I believe meant to be. So Alize was going to be originally the third facilitator, and Maggie was going to come to the retreat and she was going to facilitate tarot card readings. So that was the initial plan. Then Alize got pregnant and decided to move to Florida, so she couldn't be a facilitator. And Maggie said, hey, I'm here to help, and slid right into that position. And it was powerful. Maggie and I were friends before that, but I believe now, I'm just tight with her in a different way because we co-created that experience so powerfully. Her and Margot and I did. And it was so divine how she ended up coming in at the last minute, and she was exactly who was meant to be there. It happened exactly as it was meant to happen. So I always trust that with these retreats. There is a divine thread that is going to come in, and I kind of surrender to that. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. As the group of women, sign up, and energy builds to where we know what this group of women is going to need. And I believe spirit comes in and makes sure every ceremony, every leader, every facilitator is all orchestrated to uplift these women and heal these women that come. So I'm super excited to see that. Every time we do it, it's just this magic, and I love it.
Bring up an interesting point for me in the entrainment of the vibration of that experience. Because a lot of times I would go, I need to go to the beach to feel differently, until she was like, and train how it feels to be at the beach, and you can take it anywhere. Do you teach and share any other techniques like that so that no matter where they are, they're vibing with that energy of attainment, success, self-empowerment, self-realization, any of those?
Yes, there's always integration steps to take home and reminders that you have the ability to bring that into your everyday life. Just like Maggie was saying, it informed the rest of her year. All she had to do was drop back into that vibration of when she was there, and it opened up to her and redirected her again. So it's not just while you're at retreat that you're experiencing this. It's carried with you forever.
Right, exactly. That's the entrainment. Because going to that, or for me, whatever the case is, I entrain how it feels to be there, whether it's a fun opportunity, whatever the case is. That way I have that exact vibe, because I equate it that if I go to that place, I feel this way. I feel that, and then I entrain how that vibration feels, so that my Solodex, I can just pull up those vibrations of entrainment with anything, psychic abilities, any of those things. Have you ever had an experience where somebody that you're working with has been activated and they're amazing with their psychic medium abilities?
I think all of the women get get that. I believe they get that at retreat, and they get that through priestess path specifically. When they start getting towards the end of the priestess path, that first section, they start really noticing, messaging me about the synchronicities. And, while we're at retreat, they start experiencing those moments where it's like, oh, I heard this or I dreamt that. And could that be? They start waking up to their own potential while they're there, because there's so much magic there, is the only way I can describe it. You have to be there for those moments. I can remember one specific moment for myself that I'll share. I don't like to share other people's experiences, but without their permission. But there was an experience where I was at retreat and we were under the full moon and we were dancing and singing. And we were, I had this one sister who was there who was just crying for the world, for the state of the world. She was just purging and releasing. And it was like the music stopped and everyone looked up. And there was a shooting star that just went across the sky in the most divine moment. And it's things like that you can't plan. And after that star went through the sky, everybody was like, oh, you heard they're like this, oh. And then all of a sudden there were our horses on that property that we were at. The horses all of a sudden jumped up and started neighing, and energy there was palpable. And it's amazing. It's just, I can't tell you what's going to happen or what's happened for who, but things like that are what happen, that I believe these women go home with. And they're like, I know there's more to me. And once they know that, then they start having these experiences in everyday life. And then we'll get the messages upon returning home that, oh my gosh, I had this happen and this woke up in me. And I knew this was going to happen before it happened, and all of those things. So you go home and you're awake. I mean, I had that happen to me specifically leaving a retreat. I definitely amplified my psychic abilities, and I didn't even realize it was happening until I drove away.
So any of our listeners that want to join us, there will be a link in the show notes. So we want to thank you so much for joining us again, Harmony. And of course, Harmony and I are working closely together right now with the other podcast, The Goddess, the Witch, and the Womb. So check it out. Let us know your thoughts if you have any questions on it as well. And again, always, this is about having fun with your psychic evolution. So what you take from this conversation today, remember this is about embodiment of your psychic abilities, not just honing them, but embodying them. And find ways, find teachers, find the method or the system that works for you, and have fun with your psychic evolution. Thank you, Harmony, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jamie and Maggie. I'm so excited for The Goddess, the Witch, and the Womb, and for the retreat.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of fun things happening right now in the world. So if you need some more divine feminine, you know where to get it.
Hey guys, it's Jamie and Maggie Clark with Psychic Evolution. We want to share an upcoming Starseed Awakening Retreat.
We're teaming up with Infinite Healing from the Stars. That's Vivian Chavette, an Octurian hybrid, and Peter Benson with Tensor Energy Tools. And we're joining them for a weekend retreat in Phoenix, Arizona, July 22nd through 24th of 2022. And we're here to assist you in discovering your purpose as a starseed and how to align and activate your starseed DNA. Let the ascension begin with this multidimensional, intergalactic, and interactive journey. Included will be Arcturian holographic healing, ancestral starseed mediumship, planetary grid realignment, and exercises to embody your starseed DNA. You are cosmic celestial energy. Visit jamieclark.net to register and for more information. We look forward to gathering with like-minded starseeds.
Free your inner space astronaut and immerse yourself in your starseed heritage.
And for our podcast listeners, we do have a coupon code to take $75 off your registration at checkout. Enter the coupon code INTERGALACTIC and pay attention at checkout to see what your total is, because the language of the universe is always speaking to you.
Welcome to The Goddess,
The Witch,
And the Womb.
Reclaim your divine feminine birthright and heal with ancestral wisdom, self-love, and sacred sexuality.
This anchoring heaven on earth is taking the transcendent energy and bringing it down and into your body, all the way down to your womb, all the way down to your yoni, and embodying that sacred, divine, feminine goddess that lives within all of us that we have repressed for eons and eons. Understanding that our sovereign divinity lives within us. And once we embrace that, then there will be no other option than to love ourselves.
And the more we empower women with their own natural abilities, tools, gifts, the more, they're going to be respected. The more the people in their lives are going to recognize them for their gifts and for who they are and what they bring to the table. And I just want to give all the gifts to all the girls, to everyone. I want to reach out to all the women who were like me and maybe didn't know there's something else out there.
We have to take that time to heal ourselves so that we can be present for each other as women. You have chosen to reclaim your divine feminine, to heal, and to do this work with us. Because the world needs it now more than ever. We need to build up that feminine energy. We need to come together as a sisterhood, as a womanhood, and really claim our power. Not because we want power over anything, but because we just need that power for ourselves, for the world, and for our children, and for what's coming.
This is where your true power as a woman lies. It's in your womb space. We all hold tons of different types of energy in our womb space, whether that's from sexual relationships of our past, or it's from sexual trauma, sexual abuse, or past lives that we lived where we were killed for being women, for practicing our medicine. It can also be ancestral. Our grandmothers, our mothers, our grandmothers, they technically carried us in their womb at a cellular level. You can see how this red thread that goes between us and our actual ancestors that were afraid of being killed for practicing any earth-based magic. Witches weren't witches back when they were burned at the stake. They were just women being called witches who practiced what we now see as paganism. But it was just the way you lived in the world back then. I mean, you needed medicine from the plants to be able to heal yourself. We needed healers.
What's that stupid little saying we're raised with? Sugar and spice and everything nice?
Fuck that.
Come on. We know what they expect from us from the time we're born. They make it very clear.
Fuck the sugar and spice.
I got spice. It's just not the one you want. Welcome to the Goddess,
The Witch,
and the Womb. Hi, I'm Harmony from the podcast The Goddess, The Witch, and the Womb. Wander into the multifaceted essence of a wild woman, where we will explore our feminine essence through the potent medicine of the goddess, witch, and womb. Within the heart of every woman, there lies a need to break free, a longing for something more than our modern world makes space for. Now is her time. This is your place at a 5-day, 4-night, all-inclusive women's retreat in Sedona, Arizona, September 21st through the 25th of 2022. This is fall equinox. It is a sacred and potent time for the feminine. So join us by going to www.mysticharmonyrose.com.
If you have been enjoying this podcast, we please ask that you go to Apple Podcasts and go ahead and rate this podcast. Leave us an awesome review. We really appreciate your reviews. They mean a lot to us, and thank you so much. If you are listening to this on something other than Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review on our website. We also have a little microphone on the bottom right-hand corner of our website. If you want to ask a question, and leave us a question. It will be a voicemail recorded. We'll play back your voice on this podcast and answer your questions if we can get to them all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We love you guys.
Love and light, and we'll see you in our psychic evolution.